Heavy rain lashes the east coast with a wet Christmas forecast for large parts of the country.
The risk of large or giant hail is there. We could see damaging winds, we could see areas of heavy rain.
Police search for 5 men after an alleged kidnapping in Western Sydney. The Israeli military vows to continue its operation in Gaza after claiming control of the north. And the Prime Minister pays tribute to essential workers in his annual Christmas message. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm David Chau. Large parts of the east coast have been thrashed with severe storms one day before Christmas. The New South Wales State Emergency Service has responded to more than 20 call-outs over flash flood rescues in Sydney's east. The SES has conducted rescues for people trapped inside their vehicles and homes inundated by rising floodwaters. Rosebery, Pagewood and Maroubra are among the worst affected areas. Meanwhile, the major storm cell has caused disruption at Sydney Airport. Some inbound flights have been diverted interstate, while outgoing flights experience delays. And severe weather has left around 30,000 homes without power in southeast Queensland. Energex says properties in Brisbane, Toowoomba and the Gold Coast are currently impacted. And the wet weather is set to continue, with the Bureau of Meteorology issuing a number of warnings for Christmas Day.
Storms are on the menu once again for Christmas. Unfortunately, I know people are looking to relax and celebrate on Christmas Day, but it could be another stormy day around southeast Queensland and many other areas actually. We expect that risk of storms to go down much of the New South Wales coast and cover large parts of Victoria as well. And once again, those storms on Christmas Day could be severe. That means again, the risk of large or giant hail is there. We could see damaging winds, we could see areas of heavy rain through Christmas afternoon. So once again, I have to urge people to stay up to date with the warnings, particularly if you've travelled for Christmas and you're in a new part of the country, just being aware of where you can find weather information for where you currently are on Christmas Day. Anytime we see the risk of severe thunderstorms, flash flooding is a possibility, and that's because these storms can dump the rain very, very, very quickly. So while we might not be looking at absolutely massive accumulations over the course of 24 hours, if you get a heavy dose of rain and it all comes within half an hour, that can still be enough to cause surface flooding, flash flooding. It can overwhelm some storm drains. So flash flooding is always a possibility when we're talking about these severe thunderstorms, and they're quick moving, they're dynamic, they develop quickly and they fade away quickly.
Emergency services are searching for a missing swimmer off the northern New South Wales coast. The ABC understands 3 people were swept out to sea off Lennox Head, south of Byron Bay this afternoon. Police say a man was seen in distress in the water and didn't resurface. 2 people were pulled safely from the ocean, but a third has not been found. Police are hunting for 5 men after an alleged kidnapping in Western Sydney. Officers were called to Guildford West just after midnight following reports of a home invasion. Police believe a group of armed men stormed their way into the duplex before forcing a 29-year-old man to leave with them. He returned home uninjured a few hours later. Detectives believe he may have been targeted. 2 burnt-out cars were found at 2 separate locations nearby. They're now investigating whether the 3 crime scenes are linked. The employer of a woman who was allegedly murdered earlier this week says they're devastated by the incident. It's alleged that 38-year-old Julie Seed was stabbed and killed at a real estate business she worked at in Plympton on Wednesday afternoon. And her 50-year-old colleague, Susan Scardino, suffered serious injuries in what police say was a random attack. 30-year-old Sean Michaels Dunk was arrested at the scene and has been charged with murder and attempted murder. In a Facebook post, the women's employer said the company was devastated by the heart-rending loss of their property manager, Ms. Seed. They also praised the efforts of witnesses and paramedics who they say helped save Ms. Scardino's life. There's no let-up in fighting in Gaza. Israel says it has arrested 200 members of the Hamas and Islamic Jihad groups over the past week. Some, it claims, had been hiding among civilians before surrendering. It's battling Hamas militants to gain full operational control of the north of the Gaza Strip and is stepping up operations in the south.
Israel is expanding its offensive. Its troops are close to gaining full control of northern Gaza and they're about to focus on the south. People in central Gaza have been told to leave. A new evacuation order is in place. Many here have already been displaced several times. They have to try and escape this. The Hamas-controlled government says more than 20,000 Gazans have now been killed, many of them children, and tens of thousands injured.
My sister was next to me, but she was trapped under the rubble. I don't know if they got her out or not. She was alive.
Israel says it demolished a massive Hamas tunnel network underneath Gaza City this weekend. This video, it says, shows military units uncovering a command centre. Around 2,000 Israeli protesters rallied in a rare anti-government protest since the start of the war.
We need to make sure that Benjamin Netanyahu will go away. We've been protesting for a year now, and it's just getting worse. So it needs to be now.
They're calling on the government to secure the release of all remaining hostages.
If you want a ceasefire, that from Israel's perspective, can only happen with the release of hostages. Hamas isn't going to release hostages because they've suddenly become humanitarians. They do so because they respond to the pressure.
In the shadow of the war, Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank has cancelled Christmas celebrations. Normally it's the place where Christians commemorate the birth of Jesus Christ, but instead they're lighting candles and praying for peace. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Czechia has observed a minute's silence to remember those killed in a mass shooting at a university in Prague. Church bells tolled at noon and flags flew at half-mast on the National Day of Mourning. 14 people were shot dead at Chau's University last week by a student who then killed himself. Police are still trying to uncover a motive. A mass was also held at a cathedral in the city to honour the victims. A former journalist has been barred from running against Vladimir Putin in next year's presidential election. Russia's Electoral Commission voted unanimously to reject Yekaterina Dontsova's candidacy, citing errors in her submitted documents. The independent politician was planning to run on a platform to end the war in Ukraine. Ms. Dontsova says she will appeal the decision at the Supreme Court. Retailers are hoping for a bumper Boxing Day off the back of slow Christmas sales, with Australians looking to make the most of discounts as the cost of living bites. Paul Zara from the Australian Retailers Association says high inflation is having an impact.
Overall, the sales appear to be fairly subdued. We forecast Christmas to be up only about 1% on last year. But when we turn our heads to Boxing Day, we see that increasing to about 1.6%. I think as Australian households try to look at ways to save money under the, having the cost of living crunch occurring across most Australians, looking at ways to save. So those discount events, those promotions have particularly worked really, really well. But we do perceive that or view that we'll have a very subdued Christmas this year. People are looking for a deal, looking to save money. And as a result of the Black Friday sales were really, really strong. So that's the reason why we think Boxing Day will continue to be quite strong. People will look at seeing what purchase they can bring forward to take advantage of the discounts. Of course, things like linen and towels and all those household items that people do need, they'll be on offer and be wanted during these Boxing Day sales. So we do expect them to be, up 1.6% versus Christmas settling in at 1%.
Advances in fertility technology mean women don't need a partner to have a baby. And while there's been a steady increase in women choosing this path to motherhood over the past decade, it's not without its challenges.
When Jabette told her family she was having a baby alone, she didn't know what to expect.
I remember talking to them on the phone, and they are the definition of your old traditional families, but I was quite surprised of how positive they were.
She's a single mother by choice. and is among a growing movement of women and individuals redefining the family structure that's been held up as the cultural ideal.
I think even in my early 30s, that is exactly what I was leaning towards.
For Aoife, the desire to have a baby didn't match up with the timeline of her life.
So I figured I'd go ahead and worry about relationships in the future and focus on having a baby. And no regrets.
She always thought a partner and child would fall into place, but not wanting to settle for the wrong person or rush a relationship, decided to ask a friend to be her donor and underwent IVF.
I get to make the decisions, I get to raise into how I think is best. What I've realised since having him is that it's the type of hard work you like. You know, I don't mind hard work. It is hard work. I don't mind. He's worth it.
Over the last decade, the number of individuals accessing donor sperms to start a family solo has risen 50% at Australia's largest fertility clinic, despite a national sperm shortage, wait lists and major financial costs.
The biggest barrier that we see is obviously the need to access donor sperm, and that's not something that's readily available.
When Aoife made the decision to enter motherhood alone, she organised a meetup. Expecting a handful of people, she was astounded by the numbers.
I think more and more people just realise that, you know, they can do it by themselves.
For Jabet, the journey hasn't been without challenges.
Still a lot of stigma, which was quite surprising for me. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how this kid came to the world. If they're loved and they're cared for and they're nurtured, that's all that matters.
Advancements in fertility technologies over the past 45 years paved the way for women like Jabet and Aoife to make their own choices about how to start a family. Now, they say they want others to not shy away from forging their own path. Roxanne Fitzgerald, ABC News.
Students in Melbourne's outer southeast have been learning how to use art to tackle environmental problems. It's part of a new hybrid STEM and visual arts subject being taught for the first time.
What colours did we have and what creative?
These students are making plastic.
We had lots of greens and blues.
But none of it will go to landfill.
These are actually compostable and technically edible.
These are bioplastics.
They can be made out of anything, but the variation we have here is made of a combination of agar, which is like seaweed, water, and glycerin.
It started off as a pinkish purplish colour, and it was cabbage, but as it's dried and it's been dehydrated, it's become this sort of blue-green colour.
It's part of a new subject being taught at Frankston High School in Melbourne's outer southeast, combining art, sustainability and science.
We hadn't been teachers at Frankston High School very long, and in our conversations we thought how amazing it would be to create a cross-curricular, innovative project on sustainability.
So I was increasingly aware of what footprint we were having in the art room and what we were teaching the kids through the material choices that we were making as teachers.
The students turned their materials into artworks, while also learning about the threats plastic pollution posed to sea life.
Here is a little seascape that we made to reflect, I guess, how hard it would be for fish to tell the difference between a nurdle and a fish egg.
At the end of the year, the artworks are recycled for next year's students.
I really love the fact that you can melt down this as many times as you want and recreate art and recreate things.
The teachers invited Melbourne artist Jessie French to help teach the students how bioplastics could be used as a sustainable alternative.
It's really important to have a solution to all of these issues, as well as digesting what they are, which is a really important part of the education.
It feels like something we could fix so easily. It's just really sad to see that we haven't.
Finding new ways of creative expression that won't cost the planet. Sasha Payne, ABC News, Melbourne.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has wished all Australians a very Merry Christmas, paying special tribute to emergency service workers and those affected by the floods in far north Queensland.
I'd like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. For so many Australians, this is a chance to rest, to spend time with our family, catch up with friends, and to cherish the memories of those no longer with us. And for Christians, this is a holy time. In this time of celebration and reflection, we express our gratitude to everyone who's giving up their Christmas for the sake of others. In particular, our emergency personnel and Australian Defence Force members, whether here or overseas, our medical workers and our hospitality and those who give up for others through charities. Of course, this isn't an easy time for everyone. I know many Australians are doing it tough at the moment, in particular those in far north Queensland dealing with the aftermath of the floods. To them I say, you are in our thoughts. May better times be ahead. And may all Australians have a happy and joyous Christmas and a safe one. And please, this festive season, drive safely.
The opposition leader has also released a Christmas message commemorating Australia's resilience through tough times in 2023.
Australians will be looking forward to this Christmas. 2023 has been a year of hardships at home and adversity abroad. Millions of Australians struggle to make ends meet with mounting financial pressures, exacting a toll on people's savings accounts and their spirits as well. But despite the difficulties, Australians pressed on with characteristic resilience. The generosity and the efforts of our wonderful charity workers and volunteers epitomised the very best of our society. At Christmas, we give thanks for the things that we hold dear in life: our family, our friends, our faith, and our great fortune to be an Australian. And we also say thank you very sincerely to our police officers, our firefighters, our paramedics, our nurses, doctors, emergency service workers and Defence Force personnel who will not be resting over Christmas as they serve our nation and the greater good. 2023 has been tough, but we should never forget that we live in the best country in the world, and that's because of the Australian people. In tough times, let us not lose sight of the optimism, aspiration, the courage, the confidence, the camaraderie, and the sense of duty, which makes us tick as individuals and makes our nation truly remarkable. I wish all Australians a happy, relaxing and safe Christmas in the company of family and friends.
Pre-seasons for elite athletes usually consist of running, weights and lots of training as they prepare for the long grind of the season ahead. But it looked a little bit different for the Western Force, with the Super Rugby players clearing fire breaks in Perth's bushfire-prone areas 8 hours a day.
It's not glamorous work. The Western Force players tackling weeds instead of each other during pre-season training.
So we're just pulling up this type of weed here, so basically just trying to remove a lot of these, so kind of like a fire prevention strategy.
On top of hitting the weight room and the training track in November, the players spent 5 days clearing vegetation along fire breaks in the hills east of Perth, a move coach Simon Cron hopes will give the squad some perspective.
During the year, we probably identified that some of our players hadn't had as much life experience, before becoming a pro athlete. So one of our jobs, we've got to think about them post-rugby and how successful they'll be when they leave us.
It's important work. Wooroloo was ravaged by bushfires in 2021. 86 homes were destroyed and more than 10,000 hectares burnt.
With the devastation of those fires, anything we can do to get out here and help the community is awesome. We spoke to a few kids at the primary school and they were really appreciative of the work we're doing.
So what these guys are doing is pulling out these perennial grasses.
The community in an area at risk of bushfires appreciate the help. The Force players clearing 10 times more vegetation than local volunteers could in a week.
It sort of exceeded expectations, I suppose, to have groups of guys like this come out day in, day out, and it's not something they would normally do. But yeah, it's been fantastic.
Cron hopes the different start to pre-season generates positive energy, helping to keep a community safe while learning some valuable lessons along the way. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
Australian Test opener Usman Khawaja has butted heads with the International Cricket Council once again, with reports his application to wear a sticker of a dove, symbolising peace, at the Boxing Day Test was rejected. The 37-year-old has been battling the ICC in recent weeks as he attempts to draw attention to the plight of civilians impacted by the Israel-Gaza war. Last week, he was reprimanded by the governing body for wearing a black armband during the Perth Test after not seeking prior approval. Meanwhile, the Australian team will spend tomorrow enjoying Christmas lunch with their families and a training session with the players' children. Fast bowler Mitchell Starc is looking forward to the chance to line up at the MCG once again after spending a number of years on the sidelines of the marquee match through injury and a controversial bowling rotation policy.
I think there's a lot that goes on outside of just the cricket, and it's a special week, and you talk about the cricket, there's been times where I knew I wasn't going to play, or times where it was sort of disappointing, but the last few years it's been nice to have a good run at it.
India has beaten Australia for the first time in a women's test match, winning in crushing fashion in Mumbai. Dominant across the entire test, the hosts wrapped up the match midway through the second session to win the 11th encounter between the sides.
Holding a slim lead at the start of the final day, Australia needed to bat long to avoid defeat.
For us this morning especially, it's really important that we start well, bat for some period of time.
But instead, the tourists made a dreadful start, Ash Gardner falling without a run being added to the overnight total.
Pitching in lane, impact in lane.
Annabelle Sutherland tried to keep the runs ticking over, but her resistance ended on 27 when she gloved one down the leg side, the smallest of touches well caught. And Australia's hopes of keeping its decade-long unbeaten test record alive declined even more when Alana King was gone for a golden duck.
And a wicket for Snehran, the very first ball.
Kim Garth added just 4 before being bowled, and the tourists were all out moments later, leaving India requiring just 75 to win. Australia's only hope of a positive result was bowling India out.
And it's been given.
They couldn't afford any fielding mishaps.
As easy as they come in slip.
But fielding continued to let Australia down.
Oh, that's a poor miss.
India took their chances as they made short work of the required total, claiming an emphatic and famous win.
This is history being created.
Australia now has to regroup for the one-dayers, which begin on Thursday. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
Melbourne City has had to settle for a 0-0 draw against fierce rivals Melbourne Victory in the Men's A-League. 2 days after being snubbed for the Socceroos Asian Cup squad, Jamie McLaren thought he had scored the match winner in the 89th minute. But the City captain's goal was disallowed, the result leaving the Victory in second, while City sits 7th. Sydney FC has defeated Western United 4-2 in their earlier match. Joe Lolly scored twice in the 40th and 92nd minutes as the Sky Blues snapped a 2-match losing streak. Sydney FC is 10th on the table.
We needed it. I don't think it's our best performance. We're a little bit sloppy. The game was pretty open game. It's a good game, I guess, for people watching. There's a lot to improve, but yeah, to win, that's obviously the most important thing.
The Adelaide 36ers have ended a 4-game losing streak in the NBL with a 95 points to 88 win at home against the Brisbane Bullets. DJ Vasiljevic finished with 23 points, including 5 three-pointers. Jacob Wiley had 21 points and 12 rebounds as the Sixers recorded their 5th win of the season. Melbourne United won its annual open-air game, 109 points to 103 in overtime against the Perth Wildcats. It was United's 4th win in a row.
A must-go-to kind of game, and so it was a privilege for us to play in it. And we obviously didn't want that type of close game, but we learned a lot from it, and nice to pull that one out.
The Melbourne Boomers have ended Townsville Fire's 7-game winning streak in the WNBL with an 82 points to 62 win. Naz Hillman finished with 22 points and 8 rebounds for the Boomers. Melbourne is 3rd on the ladder, while Townsville remains on top. Australian freestyle moguls skier Jakara Anthony has continued her remarkable run with her 2nd World Cup victory of the weekend. The 2022 Olympic champion had a comfortable win over Canadian Maya Schwinghammer in the dual moguls final in Georgia. The 25-year-old has recorded 6 victories from 7 World Cup events in the past 3 weeks. Dual moguls will be added to the 2026 Winter Olympics program, alongside the singles freestyle moguls, in which Anthony is the defending champion. The forecasts of thunderstorms and even hail along the east coast could put sailors in this year's Sydney to Hobart yacht race to the test. Teams received a final briefing this morning as they prepared for the challenging conditions.
Calm above deck, but hard at work underneath.
Last-minute adjustments ahead of Tuesday's Sydney to Hobart yacht race.
We are well prepared, but there's still a few jobs to do on the list, but we'll get through those and we'll be ready on Boxing Day.
But one thing they can't control is the weather. Predicted storms could create dangerous conditions for this year's race.
When you have sudden changes in the wind speed and direction, that can be quite dangerous. Add into that potentially some hail, it does make for some dangerous conditions.
I don't know how dangerous it's going to be, but the boat's well prepared and the people on board are well organised and have a lot of experience, so we'll be able to handle the conditions.
For smaller boats, like the one being sailed by record-breaking circumnavigator Jessica Watson, the stormy conditions could be a good thing.
We're a boat that I think would do quite well in a bit of wind. So obviously thunder and lightning is not something that anyone wants, but wouldn't mind actually a bit of breeze.
But for Jessica, this year's race is about more than just winning.
I actually met my late partner Cam competing in this race as part of the youngest ever team to compete in it years ago. So for me, coming back this year and sailing in support of the Stroke Foundation is really, really important.
There's a wide range of competitors in this year's race, from two-person boats through to 100-foot yachts. The 4 Super Maxis are expected to battle it out for line honours, but with the potential for bad weather, it could be anyone's race. Rough seas putting these sailors to the test. Sean Turek-Goodwin, ABC News, Sydney.
On the satellite, there's clouds stretching from the Kimberleys to the eastern seaboard. Thunderstorms will be present off the New South Wales and southeast Queensland coast. Troughs are bringing showers and storms over the north and southeast of the country. Troughs are also drawing heat into the northeast and west. Looking around the country for tomorrow, in Queensland, very warm conditions across the state. Showers and storms in the southeast and mostly sunny elsewhere. In New South Wales and the ACT, sunny in the northwest. Storms and showers elsewhere with heavy rain in the southeast. In Victoria, showers and storms across the entire state with cool to mild conditions throughout. To Tasmania, it'll be mostly sunny to the west of the state and mostly cloudy to the east. In South Australia, cool conditions statewide. Windy and rain in the southeast and mostly sunny in the west. Showers elsewhere. It'll be a hot and mostly sunny day across Western Australia with warm and windy conditions in the northwest. And in the Northern Territory, very warm and mostly sunny in the north and south with windy conditions over the interior. Looking ahead to the forecast for Boxing Day in the capital cities, showers and possible storm in Brisbane, possible showers in Sydney, thunderstorms clearing in Canberra, possible thunderstorm in Melbourne. Hobart will be mostly sunny, clearing showers in Adelaide, partly cloudy in Perth, and Darwin will have possible storms and a top of 35. And that's the latest from ABC News. I'm David Chau. Stay with us for Four Corners.
What could we do if we had real power?